And here's Judith.
Well, good morning,
Good
everyone.
morning.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah.
Amen.
And we are on to Psalm 80 at this point. We are more than halfway through the book. More than halfway through. The psalmist pleads with God to restore his close relationship, that is God's close relationship with Israel, and to preserve the vineyard of Israel. To the chief musician on the Shoshanim, to the Shoshanim, a testimony, a psalm of Asaph. Shepherd of Israel, give ear, you who leads Joseph like a flock, you who are enthroned upon the cherubim. Let's get rid of that. Shine forth with your might before Ephraim and Benjamin and Manasseh. Stir up your might, for it is fitting for you to deliver us. God, lead us back and cause your face to shine, and thus will we be delivered. Adonai, God of hosts, how long will you be angry, ignoring the prayer of your people? You have fed them the bread of tears, and you have made them drink tears in large measure. You have made us a target of strife for our neighbors, and our enemies mock you as they please. God of hosts, lead us back and cause your presence to shine, and thus shall we be delivered. A vine out of Egypt you brought, you drove out the nations and planted it. You cleared a place before it, and it took root and filled the land. The mountains were covered with its shadow, and its branches became mighty cedars. It stretched its branches until the sea, and to the river its shoots. Why have you then broken down its fences, so that all wayfarers pluck its fruit? The boar of the forest ravages it, and the wild fowl of the field feed upon it. God of hosts, do return, we beseech you. Look down from heaven and behold, and be mindful of this vine, and of the foundation which your right hand has planted, and upon the Son whom you strengthened for yourself. It is burned with fire, it is cut down. At the rebuke of your presence they perish. May your hand rest upon the man of your right hand, upon the Son of Man whom you strengthened for yourself. Thereby we will not turn back from you. Revive us, and we will invoke your name. Adonai, God of hosts, lead us back, cause your presence to shine, and thus will we be delivered. Okay. Any reactions before we move on?
Well, whenever it mentions the sun, I always look at for notes on Jewish sources to counteract the Christological implications of that.
Yes.
So, I mean, do you happen to know offhand?
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason, since all kings of Israel were in fact anointed, that when it refers to God's anointed, there's no reason to not believe they're talking about a descendant of King David, because God tells David that the throne will never depart from him.
But they're using the word son, not anointed.
Yeah, but that's okay. I mean, it still is we're all children of God, but there's a sense in which that son, when we talk about the Messiah ourselves, and referring to the Messiah as Son of God is not Christological per se. It's a metaphor. The part that makes the Christianity different is the antinomianism, the part that comes out in I think it's in the book of Acts, which sort of says it specifically, and also Paul's take, the Apostle Paul's take on the nature of he's he's a brilliant man. He's a very brilliant person, but the idea that no longer are the Jewish people or is humanity bound by the mitzvot, that no longer is it an issue of a religious law in a very specific way. and to be totally transparent about it. Part of what made the false messianic movements so destructive is that there is a tradition. So, for example, you may be familiar with the tradition that in messianic time all the holidays will be abrogated except for Purim. So there's this sense that and Jeremiah talks about a circumcision of the heart. So the idea that people will attach themselves to God and no longer need to be specifically commanded to do things. So it's not like an open and shut kind of thing.
So the Messiah concept is similar, but the Messiah having come and fulfilled all the mitzvot and all the whatever is the
Oh,
difference.
has fulfilled that time. There's also another part that I did not mention yet, and that is the notion of the divinity of Jesus. There's nothing in Jewish tradition,
Right.
not in the psalm we just read, that suggests that this quote Son of God is divine in any way that is, that it causes, from a Jewish perspective, there's a contradiction in the unity of God in thinking that there is some other entity that shares that divinity in a way that all human beings are created in the divine image. So,
Right.
but I don't get emotional. I don't feel a need to get emotional about it. I don't feel a need to outright reject the validity of Christianity, even though I personally don't subscribe to it, because I think so much good has happened as well. And look, bad has happened as well. Bad has happened. The Jewish people have done bad stuff, okay? They just never had the kind of opportunity that some of the other religions have had because they didn't have that many people. They never had that many people subscribing to it. So I just, if there's going to be peace, we have to be able to understand that um, other religions are there for a purpose, and this is something I do want to share, and I'll share it a lot of times, and that is the way I enter into, going into ecumenical kinds of situations with other religions is based on a parable, which basically goes this way: when a human king mints coins, they all look exactly the same, but when a divine king mints coins, they are all individual. So there's no reason for me to think that every single person is going to appeal, that Judaism in its purest form or its ultra orthodox form is going to appeal to everybody, or that God wants it to be that way. That there's a large tent in which all of us can, as Jews, part of it is, at least for me, the notion of the willingness to subscribe to God's will. Judith and I had a conversation about this yesterday, but the degree to which you subscribe to God's will is a process. But that's part of the heart of it. And the fact that, and I see language and the language of religion and various theologies as simply being, there's an appeal because of people's makeup. People have different emotional makeups, and people, different metaphors appeal to different people. And in some ways, I can understand the various religions as in terms of the metaphors that they use in which to draw people close to the concept of the divine. And it's just simply different language. I don't need to get all upset about it because it doesn't, even if it may appear to contradict my own, but it never contradicts it in the profoundest way.
This one is beautiful. It is gorgeous. I mean, there is so much visual stimulation in here. I mean, it's like right hand.
Yeah.
Right hand used twice.
So hand, you
What do
should
they
know.
mean by what right hand imagery do we
Okay,
get
so
from there?
here's what I understand. When you use the term hand, and this is rather universal, you're
Right.
talking about effectiveness, you're talking about strength, you're talking about the power to act, that we use our hands to manipulate the world. And so hand becomes a metaphor for strength and power and action. All right.
Okay.
And so when we talk about the right hand, very often within Jewish tradition, the distinction between right and left, that the right side represents your super ego, and your left side represents your id. So if I were to
Oh,
try
okay.
to use Freudian terms and apply Freudian terms to
Okay.
teach psychology. So using your right hand means acting in a powerful way for the benefit, for the benefit of people,
Okay.
and not in a selfish, narcissistic way.
Is that why on the right hand is Michael and the left hand is Gabriel?
I think the reason why is, and the reason why we put, if we're right-handed, we put our tefillin on the left hand, and if we're left-handed, we put our tefillin on the right arm. And the idea is that we need to bring our id, our yetzer hara, under God's control, and that's how we serve God. So that my tefillin are on my left arm to remind me to do that. But that would
Oh, I
also
like that.
explain, and that would also explain why Gabriel is on the left, because Gabriel represents the ability, the divine ability. Remember, Gabriel and angels are God's messengers. So in other words, the fact that Gabriel has to be strong enough for us to overcome our left-sidedness. So
Okay.
we could help us overcome our weaker side. And look, I mean,
Okay.
it's that part
Because,
of us
okay. Yeah.
that can
Got it.
become, sorry, it's that part of us that oh, I'm struggling for words. You have to forgive me. I'm probably not fully awake, but um you know oh, when you get sucked into some kind of behavior that isn't good, and the temptation is just so strong, it's so hard to resist it. Okay, so
Come.
yeah, yeah, on any kind of level. And I'm struggling for the word. It's just not, my brain isn't attaching. Oh, what is it when you say somebody is sort of totally hooked on something? There's a
Addicted.
addicted. Yeah, that's the word. I
Mhm.
couldn't think of the word addicted. So we need, that's the strength with which our self-destructive urges can take us. Is you become so addicted, you can't escape it. You need uh, outside help to be able to escape it. So that's what Gabriel would represent. And that would represent. I mean, addictions aren't anything new. They aren't part of modernity. And people have always had addictions. So and they're so powerful. They are so powerful. How do you fight them? And you need help, outside help.
I find it interesting that with Ashrei, you
Yes,
open your hand.
yes, yes.
There's no right, there's no left.
Okay. That's true. So that's a good point, and very often, there's some commentaries as to what it's referring to when it says hand without left or right, and whether or not, when it says it without anything, or the context seems to indicate the right hand. But that's certainly worth some further investigation, and it could be that the rest of the it's we could actually do a meditation on that, because you want to look at the whole verse, right? You open up your hand, and what's the rest of the verse, Janet? How does the rest of the verse go?
Don't have it memorized,
Satis-
sorry.
Satisfy every living being with favor, right?
Yeah,
Potach
exactly.
yadecha umasbia lecho chai ratzon, right? So we have to, if we put a Jewish lens on how we think, then we recognize that even addictions, everything comes from God, even the yetzer hara, right? Even addictions. And the question is, what positive purpose do addictions have? Well, I can think of just a few. Um, One is, I would love to be addicted to loving God. I'd like to be addicted to studying Torah. I'd love to be addicted to performing Maasim Tovim. In other words, I'd love to have the kinds of emotional determination that addictions tend to bring with them. And the other piece is that there's huge merit, given the fact that it's so hard to overcome addictions. that when one does overcome them, that whatever you do to try and overcome a destructive addiction, you get huge credit for it. You know, you get huge spiritual credit for it. So that if there weren't any addictions, you wouldn't be able to do that. And let me go a step further. The reason why there's evil in this world is because it provides a choice for people. And if people did not have a sort of an existential choice to make when they come into this world, they at least from a theological point of view, there would have been no point for God to create the world in the first place. There'd be no way for us to perfect our souls. There'd be no opportunity for improvement. And it's because we have these fundamental choices, which sadly also, you know, can be destructive. But at the same time, there's actually a positive underbelly, so to speak, because it proves that we are free to choose, at least initially,
No.
right? Before we
I don't
become
know
a
if it proves it, but I understand your point of view.
well, the point is if there was only good and no evil, then there'd be no choice to make between good and evil.
I don't really think that question is anything you can solve any more than you can, completely understand the origin of the universe. But you can come down on a side and you can certainly present evidence for how you feel about it. But I don't think there's true proof about whether or not we have free choice.
Okay, so again, what exactly, you'd have to define, and we don't have the time now, it's already 10 to 8, right? And we haven't looked at the Sedra.
Well, sometimes.
Just to leave it as a question as what is true proof? What do we understand? Because if your sense of true proof is different from mine, and I don't understand what you mean by true proof, then I'll never get it. The probabilities are very
Yeah,
slim.
well, I don't get the proof of what you're saying as what you're saying either. So
Okay, no. Okay, so what I'm saying is that there are times when things exist in pairs. That is to say that if there's no, in other words, if the opposites don't exist, then the concept can't exist either.
right, and they're not always exactly pairs either. They're not always so binary. They're not always so black and white. And
True.
and,
No,
and
I
even
agree
if
with
they
you.
were,
Yeah,
picking one doesn't necessarily prove that you picked it out of free will.
I
Doesn't prove it.
that's true.
It's definitely a possibility.
I hear you, and I wouldn't even try to argue that, okay? Because I think you're right, and I think it is. I think life is far more shaded, but nevertheless, somewhere underneath there is a binary system because we do have such concepts. Obviously, there's a reason why there's an oral law that has to go along to make a written law possible, because the oral law is generated by circumstances alter cases. And we are always dealing with cases. So no, I get what you're saying. I'm trying to speak more from an overall philosophical,
No,
generalized.
I am exactly doing that. I don't think like certain concepts are provable, but you can choose a philosophy and live by it and develop it,
Yes,
whether it's belief in God or whether it's belief in choice or whatever kind of concept you think is helpful for your life and developing your, route of living. That's, it can be very helpful to, kind of develop a concept that seems like it's helpful to you and appealing.
right. Okay. I suppose we can do a little bit of text. Let's try and do it. All right. Okay, let me find it for you as we go into the. All right. We were talking about that beautiful, remember that beautiful explanation of the dots on the Aleph, the Yud, and the Vav? Remember we did that? Okay.
Mhm.
So, and just the way in which things were tilted in a way so that there are subtleties that help us understand Abraham and Sarah's greatness, how it suggests that they were also asking Sarah about Abraham. All right. So we're on to verse 10. Vayomer, he said, singular, right? Shov Ashu, I will certainly return. At least that's how I would simply translate it on the pshat level, right? I will definitely return elecha to you. And the next Hebrew is tortured. It's very difficult to understand it, and it sounds like it's basically an abbreviation. It's apocopated. Ka'et means at a time, right? At a time. Haya means life, right? Now, we'll see how Rashi helps us try to figure this one out. I think that basically what it's saying is, I will I will come back to you, I shall return to you at a time of life. Let's call it that way, say. So at a time of life, Vehine ven l'Sara ishtecha, and behold, there will be a son to Sarah, your wife. So that's the life he's referring to. The Sarah Shomat, and Sarah was listening. She was hearing this conversation. Petach ha'ohel, at the opening of the tent, Bahu acharav, but it was behind him. So he did not see Sarah listening to the conversation. So let's take a look here. Here we go. So Rashi jumps right into it. Ke'et chaya. Ke'et hazot. So he says, like this time, ke'et hazot, l'shana haba'ah, next year.
Wait, I think there's a Rashi before that on Safaria that's Shuv Ashov, or
No, I think that's
on my Rashi there is.
no, the Safaria has this left out. When I was preparing this, I realized that either they just left it out, or the manuscript that he has. Shov Ashuv is actually 3 lines down. If you're following my text,
Okay,
look at it. There's Shov Ashuv. You see
mine
that?
for verse 10 has Shov Ashuv first, and then Ke'et Chaya at second, and third, and then a fourth one.
That does make sense because Shov Ashuv actually appears earlier on in the sentence. So if Safaria deals with all of these Ka'et Chayas, then
It has it twice.
they've improved. What they've done is they've corrected the manuscript, okay, or the printed edition, or the edition of Rashi that they have. Okay. Anyway, let's just do it the way it's here. Ka'et Hazot, so l'shana haba'ah, next year. U Pesach haya. It happened to be the festival of Pesach, and the way
I was thinking spring. I
Yeah.
actually thought of spring.
Pesach occurs in the
Yeah.
spring.
Time
It
of life,
does.
yeah.
And the reason that's true too. Very good point about that. That is a describing Eid Chaya.
I got goosebumps, so that means it must be true.
Well,
Okay.
but you didn't sneeze, so that would have proved.
No, I did not sneeze.
Okay, the
Gosh
way
darn
we
it.
know, by the way, that it's Pesach is that when the angels show up at Lot's door, he offers them matzah. He offers them matzah. Ula Pesach haba, and in the following Pesach, Nolad Yitzchak. Yitzchak was born. So unless it could have been a leap year, of course, which would mean that he was born after 7 months, which is apparently still a viable, at least certainly back then, they believed that was a viable period of gestation. Okay.
So by the way, Passover before the Exodus is akin to like Abraham following all the commandments and things like that.
Is that something you read or something you just thought
It's
of?
anachronistic.
Yes.
But is that based on like sort of the timelessness of the commandments and also the festivals?
I never have thought of it that way, Lauren. You've introduced a whole new sort of line of thinking, and I think that for sure, I think it's a great way to look at it. I mean, here's the thing: the festivals are called Mo'adim, and the Hebrew word Mo'adim I think, has the basic meaning of appointment, so that you can think of festivals as appointments with the divine. They sort of represent time when the divine is somehow more concentrated and more accessible. Yeah, Golda.
That they always had the agrarian portion of the holiday.
Yeah.
There's always the agrarian portion where the harvest festivals and whatever is going on at those times. I'm thinking that the religious is added a little more later.
Well, I'm wondering if the word,
So why you have matzah is because, you don't have all the extra eggs and you don't have the milk because the animals are doing what the animals do.
So
but also the word Pesach, I guess that's related to lamb that could have some spring connotations in addition to the Exodus connotations.
I will tell you though, I don't see any reason to bifurcate the agrarian element from the spiritual element. I think that's I don't bifurcate them. I think
Okay.
that they go. It's a point of view.
Well,
It's
absolutely,
they
since
go-
the Exodus, definitely, but
well, no, but
before, maybe, well, they would always have some kind of a gift to God along with the,
right. So I mean,
yes. So,
again,
okay, I can understand that. I will agree with that.
I'm going beyond that, and I think
Yeah.
that what we want to do is, I mean, this is sort of a mystical background to things, and one of the ideas of mysticism is that there is cosmic significance to sometimes very ordinary things. That in fact there really is deep significance, and to understand the connection between human beings and the natural order of things. It seems to me that in some ways a distinction between between animals, the rest of the animal kingdom, and human beings is that the animal kingdom is it's sort of synchronized, or it's synthesized with part of nature. The animal kingdom is part of what defines nature, but human beings are able to transcend nature. And in some ways, we can feel that we're outside of nature. And that leaves us feeling with a certain sense of insecurity, for want of a better word. And that finding that part of what the mitzvot do by trying to align ourselves with divine will, since part of the assumption is also that nature operates by divine will. And if you wanted me to prove that Judaism teaches that, just look at Ma'ariv Aravim in the Ma'ariv service, or look at Yotzer Or Uvorei Choshech, these two prayers that occur before the Shema. And clearly there's a sense that nature, I mean, it's all over the place, that ultimately nature is an extension of divine will. So when we ourselves try to align ourselves with divine will, and this is the unique element of being a human being, is that we have a choice to do it or not to do it. And I'm speaking, and Lauren, of course I'm thinking of your point, and the fact that it's far more shaded. It is shaded, but nevertheless, that there's a desire to do that is a way of us, by also becoming synthesized with nature. And which I think, as I said, I think that it speaks to a certain existential feeling of insecurity with regards to our place in the world. Anyway, I'm going on too long about this, and I need to go back to this. So let's at least get this one done. Okay. So we know it was Pesach. All right. And the following Pesach, Nolad Yitzchak, Isaac was born. Midalo Karinan Ha'et. Sorry. We don't say, this isn't pointed, so I'm really glad that I looked at this ahead of time. What Rashi is saying, because it looks like we don't say this, but we say this and this and this are exactly the same. So what he's saying is he doesn't say ka'et as in a time, but ka'et, which is the definite article in the time. So Rashi's pointing out that because we don't.
He's saying
say,
it backwards from according to what this says. It says we
well,
do not read at this time, but at a time.
okay, well, all right.
According to my Safaria.
All right, I probably have to yield to them, but the point is that the ka is a definite article. So the question is, how do you translate a definite article? Okay, and look, let's just keep going on with the Rashi. All right, if I may. Okay. So he says, ka'et chaya, and it says, ka'et hazot, like this time. So I suppose you can. I mean, I said this is tortured, but regardless, he's talking about a specific time. If we're using the definite article, we're always talking about something specific, that we're aware of. That's what the implication is of using the term the as opposed to a. Means it's indefinite. We're talking about any sort of thing. When we talk about the, we're talking about a specific thing. And this ka is like ka ha. And ha, we know, is the definite article. So grammatically, this ka 8 means like the time. That's what it means. So again, I don't try to push my level of understanding beyond the person who did the vaYera translation, who I'm sure is, could walk circles around me. But I'm just saying this is what's in front of me. Okay. So anyway, shetahei chaya lachem. Okay, that it will be, again, I'm just going to translate the way it is. Don't expect it to make a lot of sense. It will be a life to you, shetiyu kolchem shleimim v'kayamim, because you will all be whole, right? Whole and existing. So is this, and I'm just, this is so difficult that it's like a puzzle. And it's like, is he saying here, is what Rashi's saying here, is that right now, in a sense, you're not really living. But next year, when Isaac is born, it will complete you. And that's what Rashi's saying. And that's the shleimim. You will be complete and, kayam, existent, solid, something like that. Again, I'm struggling for words.
Here it says alive.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's, okay.
It's interesting
All right.
because that would help accommodate the length of time a normal pregnancy is, because if you came in a year at this time next year, there will be life.
Right. Right.
You'll be alive.
Okay. I have to stop here, sadly. I guess I'm going to put in a marking for next year, right? We should put, we're talking about next year too, if I ever get back to this.
Yeah, it was like, see you next year.
That's right, exactly. But it's going to even be, there's going to be something extra next year.
Yeah, be an extra seat at your Pesach Seder.
Right. You're right. Okay, let's get out of this. Thank you all. And we do have a minion right now. So good morning, everyone who joined us. Let me stop the recording and say farewell to our Facebook friends.